pleased to be interviewed by you today. So I think you're very good news.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear that.
So may I give you an earpiece?
Yep. Hi, I can't hear you very well.
Turn the sound.
Yeah, could you?
We're doing it here. So we're doing it here.
I can hear that.
Thanks, have not done it?
Yeah.
How's that? Do you want to flip it with yourself? It's this button here.
Yeah, just about. I can. Is that David Mellor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It was his decision. To be honest, I didn't try to argue him out of it because I think he'd made the right decision. That as editor of one of the greatest news organisations in the world, he had to take responsibility for a very shoddy bit of journalism. But I think, with great respect, which one would always show to John Humphrey's interrogative journalism, it was an example of the way in which the BBC quite rightly tries to expose the truth even when it's horrible about itself. And I don't think anybody can grumble if you're working for the BBC and you get from John Humphreys exactly the same sort of tough questioning that he'd give anybody else. I think it's a mark of the BBC actually looking at itself in a beady-eyed way. But I think, if I may say so, the way that Sky itself covered the phone hacking stories was another example of a broadcaster being absolutely honest about what it says about itself. So George was a very fine broadcaster. It was a tragedy that he was laid low by a lot of the things which he wanted to deal with at the BBC, because as soon as he got into the job, he found himself facing a crisis in which he was at least implicitly involved, because he'd been head of vision at the time when the Newsnight film wasn't shown. That was all part of the tragedy, but I hope people will recognise, other editors will recognise, that he's actually done a very honourable thing. I thought it was John Humphreys at his strongest, and George had a very difficult... what did I think about George Entwistle? I thought it was a difficult interview for him, but I've heard lots of other people have trouble with John and other broadcasters. I've occasionally done lousy interviews myself. I hope this isn't one. Went because there was a bad piece of journalism for which he took responsibility. That's why he went, and it was an honourable and decent thing to do. What we now have to do is to get a grip on what's happening in the BBC, including the journalism which is at the heart of what we do and what we're about. And we have to make sure that Tim Davie, the acting Director General, has all the support he needs, and that in making an appointment to the post permanently, we have to make sure that a very large and complex organisation has a leader who has the right sort of support, and that organisation doesn't operate on the basis of silos, that its procedures aren't too bureaucratic but actually work. One of the problems that I've mentioned about the BBC, though I don't have executive responsibility for it, and one of the problems which the last Director General was trying to deal with was the fact that we're at one and the same time both overmanaged and undermanaged, and we've got to get that right. Well, I think my job is to make sure now that we learn the lessons from this crisis, that we learn the lessons from the two inquiries which are being done by Nick Pollard and by Dame Janet Smith, that we get to grips with the issues raised in the investigation of Newsnight, and we put those things right. If I don't do that, and if we don't restore the huge confidence and trust that people have in the BBC, then I'm sure people will tell me to take my cards and clear off. I'm not going to this morning take my marching orders from Mr. Murdoch's newspapers. I think that there are big issues that need to be tackled involving the BBC, and insofar as they are the responsibility of the trust, which is above all about restoring confidence in the BBC on the part of the people who pay for it, that's what I want to give my attention to. I don't think it's shot to pieces, but it's taken a very, very big hit. Look, I'm sure you report this when it happens. All the polls show that the BBC is the most trusted news organisation in the country by a mile. And we've got to restore that trust, because it's the main basis for our relationship with the British public, who pay for us through the licence fee. We're part of the national life of this country, we're part of the national psyche, and in order to restore confidence in us, then we have to make sure that our journalism is of the highest quality.